Good afternoon and happy first day of December. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Michelle and I am a part of the CampSite support team and I will be conducting today's medical webinar. We will be reviewing the medical module today and all the different forms available within it and a few other additional features that the module comes with. So I'm expecting a few more attendees, so I'm going to wait a few more minutes here just to allow for any latecomers to come in before I get started. As for everyone currently on the webinar, if you could please locate within your GoToWebinar control panel and select your question section. And there, if you could let me know that you can hear me okay and that you can see my screen, that way I know that everything is working as it should. Okay, if anyone in the webinar could please let me know that they can hear me in the question section. Thank you. Awesome. All right, again, I'm just going to wait a minute here just to allow for any additional attendees to pop in here. So just one more minute. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I also wanted to mention within that question section, feel free to type in any questions that you may have in there throughout this training. If I can't get to your question or if it's something that requires a little bit more of a detailed answer or requires a bit of back and forth, I'll make sure to send you a follow-up email with a response after today's webinar. And this also will be recorded as well. It's going to be within your FAQ section here. So we're going to post it shortly after today in this section or this page here under the CampSite training sections. So if you wanted to, or the CampSite training section here, if you wanted to maybe pass it along to other colleagues or if you wanted to rewatch it yourself. So again, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I'm going to start off today's medical webinar by going over the parent-facing side of CampSite. And I'm going to go over how parents can fill out medical forms and what those forms look like. So once I go over the parent-facing side, I'm going to go into the administrative side of the medical module and go over how we can manage certain features within this particular module. So right now I'm logged in as a test parent, and I'm going to dive into how they are able to access those forms. But I wanted to preface with the medical module, there are two events in which you could choose to present medical forms to parents. You could present them either during the enrollment process, or you can present them after the camper is officially enrolled in camp. So some camps prefer to have parents fill out medical forms when their campers' enrollments are official, just to kind of make that initial enrollment process as quick as possible. Although it's really up to your camp when you want to present the forms, and I'll go over the setting where you can control this later on in this training. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into where to access the forms that come with the medical module. So to do that, as a parent, they will need to log into the parent dashboard and then select the form section here. And then from there, the parent will need to select the camper at which they want to fill out these medical forms for. So I'm going to do this for Jill Paulson here. So Jill is a camper within this family. And then within this page, parents will see all the forms that they are required to fill out, and then the medical forms down at the very bottom here. So there are 4 health history forms that are available within the medical module, and these are web-based forms, and they're going to be the first 4 forms up here. And by default, they're broken down into 4 different parts. So again, they're listed here individually. I'm going to go through each one of these forms with you to go over what's included within them. Additionally, within the medical module, there is an option where you can actually have parents upload a hard copy version of a form, or you could even have them upload their own version of like a hard copy form. And I'm going to go over how you can create those if this is something that you would like to collect from parents. But I'm going to go ahead and start off by going over the 4 web-based health history forms that we have available within the medical module. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one here. So I'm going to go in as a parent. Within this particular form, the health history form part 1, it's going to include basic information. So parents would fill that out about the camper, so height and weight, and then allergies. They would fill in any allergies that apply to the camper. In this case for Jill, she is allergic to bees. And then it's an environmental allergy. So I wanted to point out that there is a little drop down here for certain questions. In this case for allergies, there are 4 different values here. All the different drop down lists that you see pictured here for parents, they are customizable. Although we do provide camps with sort of standard set of values. For example, for the allergy drop down list, we provide these 4 values, but they can be deleted and also added to if needed. So there's also an area where they can add dietary information. Again, there's a drop-down list where they would pick the type of diet the camper follows, and these are also customizable. In this case, she just has a regular diet. And then we have restrictions down below. So this is where parents can add any sort of medical restrictions that the camp needs to be aware of. These are essentially things that may prevent the camper from participating in certain activities. This is where they can add anything like that. So it doesn't look like Jill has anything here. Then we have insurance information within this form. This is where parents can add information regarding the camper's insurance. A few questions are listed here, including whether they are covered, the name of the insurance company if they are, and a few other questions here. And then down below we have where parents would type in a signature. So it would be an e-signature that the system would capture here. This is required of all health history forms, of all of the web-based health history forms that the module provides. So I'm signed in as Matt Paulson, so I'm just going to sign off as Matt. And before I sign off on this, I wanted to mention that after I go over the parent-facing side, I'm going to go over how to manage these forms. I think I mentioned that on the admin side. And when doing that, users have the option to completely remove a section from any of these health history forms if it isn't needed. So for example, for whatever reason, you don't need to include insurance information in the health history form, you can choose to turn it off or make it inactive. Having said that, you are only able to remove the entire section. You aren't able to remove particular questions from a section. So if you only need certain questions from a section in these forms, not all, we typically advise removing the entire section and making it inactive, and adding the ones you may need from that section as well as custom medical questions, which I'm actually going to cover in today's webinar. So just wanted to point that out before I move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off on this particular form and by hitting the button down below. And then from there, the parent will be directed to another page confirming that it was submitted. And they also have the option here to download a PDF version of that form submission if they would like it. So, and then they would just click on the button below to return back to the forms page for the camper, and then they can move on to the next form. So when they return, they'll be able to see that it was submitted, a little check mark there to indicate that. They can come back and download it and the date that it was submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next health history form, part 4. This is the other form that we author within the medical module, and this would encompass immunization information. And they would also answer some additional questions down below, including like, has the camper ever had chicken pox, things like that, and if so, like the date of when that happened. So parents will be presented with the most commonly needed immunization record information, and they would simply just select the date at which it occurred. So additionally, we have added the COVID doses 1 and 2 to the immunization record. So this was something that was recently rolled out by the development team. So we added that in there to account for that information if it applies. So I'm going to go ahead and just submit this form since I have this information already pre-filled out for me in my test database. I'm going to go ahead and sign off on that as Matt Paulson. So this is where, again, immunization record information is collected. So before I hit submit, I wanted to also mention that within CampSite, health history forms are considered yearly forms. If made available, parents are prompted to fill them out every single year the camper enrolls to camp. That information cannot be rolled over. This is because medical information can change from year to year, so we leave it up to the parents to fill it out each year. That way, the camp has the most accurate information on file. However, immunization records can be rolled over from year to year. So if you choose to include this in the health history forms, you do have an option when you roll over to also roll over immunization records, because that information is static and doesn't change. But again, everything else is captured on a yearly basis. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off on this. And return back to forms. And now I'm going to head into our health history form part 3. And within this particular form here is where parents would fill out medication information if that applies. If there's any medications that the camper needs to take, they would be able to add that within this page here. So we have some text up at the very top. So this information is not customizable. It is just pre-populated, a pre-populated message that appears above each health history form part 3, or wherever you include the medication section. So to add medications, parents would just simply click on that button there, and they would fill out the following information. So I have some pre-filled out information here. So we see that Joe here needs to take Claritin, the dosage here. So this is the information that the parent would fill out, along with how given, the start and end date, and any notes. And then when that medication should be delivered. So we have a few delivery times here. So this particular question here is especially important because the medications entered here or the answer pretty much tied to this question and would be tied to the medical module's built-in scheduled medication delivery tool. So it tells the system when the camper needs to be delivered this particular medication. So that particular tool is something I'm going to cover in today's training. It just provides an easy way for camps to log medication deliveries straight through CampSite. So kind of easy way to do that on the go. So I wanted to also point out that the only delivery time that the system provides by default is as needed. Camps would have to provide their own delivery times within CampSite, so that way the system knows, when medication should be delivered. So in this case, for the Claritin medication for Jill, it has to be delivered during breakfast time. And then we also have an EpiPen here for Jill's allergies. which is, of course, as needed. So, and then below we have forbidden OTCs. This is where parents would be able to add any over-the-counter medications that the camper is forbidden to take. So they would just check off that particular medication, and that way the camp is aware of that and not to give the camper that medication. So we provide a standard list of commonly given over-the-counter medications, but this can be customized by the camp as well on the administrative side. So you can see here that Jill cannot take Dramamine, and then down below the parent would just simply sign off on that. And I'm going to head back to that forms page and go over the remaining forms that we have. Then down below that part 3, we have that last health history form, part 4. So within this particular health history form, this is where parents would fill in emergency contacts up at the very top. This section prompts them to fill out their first name, their relationship, phone number, things like that. So this section only allows for 2 emergency contacts. If your camp requires additional emergency contacts, you could potentially create an additional custom medical question to request additional ones if a 3rd or a 4th or more are needed. And I'll go over that today as well. And then down below we have healthcare providers. So this section collects doctor information, dentist, and orthodontist information if that applies. We can add that here. And then down below we have general health history, which is a series of yes or no questions relating to the camper's general health. So we have a few here, like has the camper ever been hospitalized, had surgery, things like that. Simply just a yes or no drop down here. And then there's also an area where they can add any details. If they answered yes to any of these, they can explain it down below here. And then below general health history, there's a section for mental health history information. So another set of yes or no questions, but in this case, it's relating to the camper's mental health. So they can just simply select yes or no, and then another area where they can explain any yes responses. Here. And then below we have custom medical questions. So they would appear here. Custom medical questions are just questions that you could create on the administrative side. So any questions that we don't currently offer by default, you can go in and add them. For example, we don't offer a sunscreen question. It doesn't come with the forms as they are. You could create a sunscreen question, whether the camper can have it applied. Maybe if they're allergic, it's a good way to capture whether or not they can have it. And I'll go over how to create custom medical questions in today's webinar as well, and how to add those in. And then down below, we have the permission to treat, or the authorization for healthcare statement here. So this is a standard permission to treat or authorization statement that parents must sign off on before submitting this particular form. So it's ultimately granting your camp permission to treat the camper during emergencies. So this statement here is not customizable. So if you choose to keep it, you wouldn't be able to edit the text or message within it. If you do include it in your health history forms, it is required for parents to sign off on. So, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off on that. Camps can feel free to remove this section or this statement if they do not want to include it on the health history form. So I'm going to sign off on the whole form down here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And that is the last health history form that we offer. And I'm going to go over the next 2 forms, which are the printed medical forms. So I'm going to click on Return to Forms. If I scroll down towards the bottom, there are two forms here. So these reflect printed medical forms. So the last type of medical forms. So these, as I mentioned, are going to be, or they could be, hard copy forms that you have parents download, print, and then fill out and then upload back in. So you can provide them with your own version of the form and they can upload it back in, filled out. Additionally, you can choose to not upload a form or a copy and then have them upload their own copy of it. So for example, this upload immunization records one. So we have a healthcare form here that parents can download. In this case, it'll take us to a page where I can, as a parent, can download the form and then scan it and then upload it back in here, and they can submit it. So this is optional. You don't have to do that. It's a good option if you need a physical signature from maybe a physician or need a physical signature from the parent or guardian. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to forms. And I think that covers it for the different forms that the system or the module offers and how parents can fill them out. And so now I want to hop into the administrative side, and I'm going to go over how to manage your admin settings for these forms. So I'm going to switch gears and go into the admin side, and I'm going to head to that page by clicking on admin, and then I'm going to select the campers tab here, and then I'm going to select medical. And this is also offered for staff as well. So if your camp has the staff module currently, we do offer within the medical module, medical forms for them to fill out. So they mirror these forms that I'm going over for campers, and you would be able to manage them here in the staff tab. But I'm going to go over the camper side within this webinar. So within this page, there are a few settings that admin can control. The first one being whether they want the health history forms even available to parents. So if this is set to yes, all of the forms will be active. If it's set to no, the health history forms will be inactive, so they won't be able to fill them out. So I'm just going to set this to yes. And then we have a due date that you can set. So this is optional. If you would like to set a due date for your health history forms, if you have them available, you can add one here. Keep in mind that parents can still submit forms after this date. It's just a way to encourage parents to get them in by then. Then we have the show emergency contacts on camper profile for users without medical permissions. So if you would like users who don't have access to the medical module to be able to view at least emergency contacts on the camper profile, you'd want to set this to yes. So if set to yes, a new tab will appear in place of the medical tab in the camper profile, and it'll list all of the responses as far as emergency contacts within there for them to access. So, and then we have the setting in which you can control whether parents have the option to download a PDF version of their health history forms. So if you remember going in as a parent, there was an option for us to download a submission. If you want that to be available, you would set that to yes. And then you also have the option to change how name of medication is displayed. You can change it to be name and strength if you want a parent to indicate that within the name. So, and by default, it's name, but you can change it to this by coming here if you would like. And then down below, you have your camper health history form configuration. So this section allows you to edit each health history form individually and also rearrange the order of those forms, so how they're presented to parents. So the first thing you could do is, as I mentioned, rearrange the order. So we have the health history forms in order here numerically. But if you wanted to change that order, you can click on the three gray bars to the left and drag and drop them into any particular order. This particular icon is pretty universal in CampSite, the drag and drop icon here. You can also choose to edit settings for a particular health history form by just simply double clicking on the pencil. So you can edit the name of the form. You could choose to display it during enrollment. If this particular setting is switched to no, this health history form will not be presented to the parent until that camper is officially enrolled in camp. So this is where you can control that setting as far as only presenting the form after their camper is officially enrolled. So otherwise, if it's set to no, this particular form will be included during the enrollment process before they may have been officially enrolled. If you do set it to yes, there is a require to enroll setting that you can set to yes if you want them to have to fill it out before they submit a request. There's also an area where you can add instructions to the top of this particular form. If there's anything additional you want them to see, you would update that form. So this applies to every single one of your health history forms. You would simply just double click on the pencil there. And then additionally, if you want to see the sections within each health history form part, you would just simply click on the name. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on the health history form part 1. And then from there, you'll see those different sections that we saw as a parent. So we'll see basic info, things like that. And also if I click on part 2, we'll see that immunization records are there as well. So before submissions come in for these forms, admin can actually move sections into different forms and within a different order. So before that happens, there will be a drag and drop icon right next to that section, and you can drag and drop them into different parts or in different orders. However, once you start getting submissions for these forms, a lock will appear, as you see here, indicating the placement of these forms are locked because we already have submissions for that particular form. So since we submitted the health history forms for Jill earlier, the placement of my forms are currently locked in. So because of that, you'd want to make sure to rearrange any of your sections prior to making your health history forms available. That way you can prevent the system from locking in that order. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide these sections by just clicking on the name. I'm going to leave the health history form part 1 sections open here to go over some additional settings that we have. So you can manage those different settings for each section by simply double clicking on the pencil here. So for example, basic info, I can double click on the pencil here and edit settings for this particular section. So you can make it inactive if you don't want to collect this information. You can also make it mandatory. So if you would like to do that, you can set this to yes. If yes, parents must submit responses to the entire section in order to proceed. So, and then any instructions that you want to appear above this particular section, and you would update that form. So this is available for every single one of your sections here. And within each form, it can hold a maximum of 6 sections, and each health history form part has to include at least one active section in there in order for it to even appear to families. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this by clicking on that. And additionally here, you can add a new page, so a new form that would be presented to them by clicking on Add New Page in case you want to maybe expand into more parts, maybe more than 4 if you would like. So I'm just going to delete this. You can only delete a page if there's no sections in it, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and then hit Save Changes. And that pretty much covers how to manage those different forms, those health history forms in this case. Now that I've touched on that, I'm going to go into the camper profile. I'm going to go over how admin can access individual campers' medical information. So the information that parents have submitted through these forms. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into Jill Paulson's profile. If you remember, we filled out those forms for her as a parent. I'm going to go to the search bar, go to her profile here. And then from there, I'm going to click on the medical tab. So each camper will have a medical tab here. And within this tab, there's going to be various sub-tabs here representing different pieces of medical information. So I wanted to point out also that there's going to be a year drop down. So since these forms are yearly, we have a drop down in which you can review previous years if needed, but it's always going to default to your current enrollment year, which in my case is 2022. So the first tab, Forms, is where admin would be able to see the status of the camper's medical forms, including the 4 health history forms and any printed medical forms that you may have included for them to fill out. You can see whether it's been received, if so, what the date was, and who submitted them. So you can see here that we submitted them today as Matt Paulson. You can also reset it by double-clicking on the delete icon to reset that submission. And if they uploaded any printed forms, you can click on that link to download the copy of that. And admin also have the option to upload a version themselves if a parent didn't do it on their end. So, and then you can mark it as received. Down below, you'll be able to see the permission to treat. So if you included that in your health history forms, you'll be able to see who signed off on that. In this case, it was Matt Paulson, which was us earlier, and the date that it was signed. To the right of the permission to treat signature, you'll see a reviewed by and a reviewed date field. So this is an internal field that admin can use to indicate who may have reviewed this information. So maybe you have a staff member or a nurse actually review all of the submissions and responses after a parent submits them. They can indicate who it was. So maybe a nurse did. You can hit that. And then I can set looks like the date's not refreshing, but the date should pop up there. But it's more of an internal field there in case you wanted to add that information. So that is the reviewed by field. Above this list here, you'll see also a link where admin can download a printed copy of the camper's medical profile. So this would include the camper's info, parent info, along with the information inputted from the health history forms, including things like emergency contacts, medications, things like that. So you can do that individually for a camper in their profile. Additionally, there is an option that I'm going to cover later where you can actually download medical profiles in mass, and I'm going to cover that today. And at the very top of this page also, you'll probably notice this little lock icon up there. So this is where you can actually lock this information in. So if it's locked, parents would not be able to make any changes to their health history forms, and that information would be pretty much locked in, and they would have to contact your camp to make any changes. So right now, this medical profile for Jill is unlocked, meaning the parent can go in and make any edits to this information. But let's say hypothetically I wanted to lock in that information, I can double click on that lock and hit OK. And it's going to turn yellow, indicating that parents cannot make any changes to this information here. They would have to reach out to the CAM to do so. So by default, the forms will not be locked, so an admin would have to come to their profile to actually lock it if needed. So I'm just going to go ahead and just unlock it there for now. So that is how to lock in a medical profile if needed. So that is the Forms tab. I'm going to hop into the Logs tab here. This particular tab here relates to our healthcare visit log tool that I'm going to cover today. This tool allows you to log in any healthcare visits or even medical incidents directly within CampSite. So within this tab is where you can view any log history and add a new log here. We also have a communication log here where you can actually log in whether you spoke to a parent or anything like that regarding this information. So, but I'm going to touch on this tool later on today and how to actually use it. And then all the subsequent tabs here are going to reflect the different sections within the health history forms. So, for example, emergency contacts, that's where this information is stored, general info, doctors, insurance. All this information is double-click to edit on the back end if you need to make any changes. So also we have the medications tab where admin can view all the medications that were added by the parent. Also, this is also where admin can add a new medication on the back end. So we can see here the Claritin that was added, the dosage. This is also double click to edit as well. We'll see a month calendar here of the current month, and then a set of delivery stats as well. And you also noticed that next to this medication or these medications that there is a flag icon right next to a few of these. And also it's going to be available for forbidden OTCs and other fields here. That particular flag is indicating that an admin can mark it as critical. So critical pieces of medical information are classified as life-threatening if not monitored. So by default, the icon will always be gray here, but you can mark something as critical by simply just double clicking here. So it's going to turn red. So this is actually an internal function, meaning that only administrators are able to make medical information critical. So parents cannot actually do this on their end. So again, you can do that by simply double clicking on the red dot. And this is available for medications. And I think I mentioned also general info, so diet information and restrictions, forbidden OTCs, and I think that's about it. So with critical medical information, if you wanted to get a glimpse of all of the critical medical information for a particular camper, you can simply click on this link above here. And it'll allow you to see any pieces of medical information that administrators have marked or deemed as critical here. So obviously with the bee stings, that's important. That may be life-threatening. So that's listed here. And also the EpiPen here. So we're about halfway through. So I think we want to take a quick peek at the question sections to see if any may have popped up. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in there and I'll take a quick peek and answer as many as I can before I move on. Okay, doesn't look like there are any questions, but again, feel free to use the question sections in your GoToWebinar control panel, and I'll keep an eye on those to see if any questions have popped up. Oh, actually, Jared, you have a question here. Are all these fields reportable? Yes, so within the advanced reports feature, you can report on those fields, yes. Okay, I'll just hang out here a little bit longer to see if any other questions pop up. Okay, so there's a question that came up that where can I update my notifications to be notified when a form is complete? So we do have a notification that admin can enable when parents submit a form, and that would be in the admin page under DB management. And then you would go to your account here and double click on the three gray dots. And then under email notifications, under campers, if you click on the triangle, there is a camper form submissions option that you can check off to get notified for forms. All right, so some good questions here. Feel free to continue typing them in there as you think of them. But I'm going to go ahead and continue now. So I'm going to go ahead and head back into the medical dashboard here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this is going to be the next portion of our training that I'm going to cover. So within this medical dashboard, this is going to allow you to access various medical tools along with different reports. So we had a question about reporting. So I did mention that they are available, or these fields are available to report on within our advanced reports feature, but we do have a way to report on, to pull up different reports here within this medical report section. And I'm going to cover that today. So for the first part of this section, I'm going to go over medical management here. So I'm going to go over medical delivery statuses first. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And within this particular page is where admin will be able to edit the different options that they have to pick from when they start delivering medications. So this is used in the scheduled medication delivery tool, which I'm going to run through today. So by default, the system provides delivered and missed, which is pretty standard statuses, but you could choose to add any additional ones if you would like to. So that's medication delivery statuses. I'm going to go ahead and head back to medical, to financial. And I'm going to go into the next page, which is medication deliveries. So on this page is where admin can add the different delivery times. So I mentioned that we only provide as needed. So if you would like to use the scheduled medication delivery tool, you'd want to make sure to add different delivery times here. So I have breakfast all the way down to bedtime. And you can add any new ones or additional ones by clicking on that link. You would add the name and then the time. So lots of flexibility as far as time here. So that is the medication deliveries, again, tied to the scheduled medication delivery tool. So I'm going to head back to medical and go into the next page, which is going to be medical drop-down list. So this is where admin can view and manage the 3 medical drop-down lists that are being used in the health history forms. So if you remember, there was a drop-down for allergy types in the allergy section that parents filled out. You can manage them here. So we have those 4 standard ones, diet types, forbidden OTCs. You can choose to delete any of these, add in new values, and also rearrange the order by simply clicking and dragging and dropping. And to hide those values, you would simply just click on the link to hide those. So again, those are attached to some of the questions in your health history forms. So I'm going to head back to medical. And I'm going to head into the next page, which is going to be medical log items. So as mentioned earlier, there is another tool in the medical module that's available where you'd be able to log healthcare visits or even medical incidents. This is where you'd be able to manage the values that are available within each section of that log. So I'm going to go over this in more detail, but just as a quick overview, in that log, when you'll be able to answer different questions relating to these different options here. So assessment, complaint, disposition, staff attending, and treatments. These would be things that would have to be answered within each log for each camper. So to manage the values that you could pick for each, you would simply click on the icon next to each, and you'll see the different options available for that. So assessment, we have things like headache, poison ivy. So these are some of the most common assessments. These are going to be provided already in the log, but you could choose to add any additional values. Also complaint. So we have things like bee stings, disposition. For staff attending, that's not going to be pre-filled in. This is something that, of course, the camp would want to add, since it would reflect your staff. So we have a few of my colleagues here that are listed. Also have treatment. We have some common treatments here. You could choose to delete any of these values as long as no one's used them in a log. If they have been used, the delete icon will be locked, and it will let you know on the left how many times it's been used. But for example, there's a particular one that has been used, but you still want to remove it, you can set it to no for the active setting here. It's kind of a little bit of a workaround if they have been used and you still want to remove them. So to hide these values, you just double click on that icon to the left here. And I'm going to dive into how to use this log a little bit later on. So I'm going to head back to medical. And I'm going to go over the next page, or the next option here, which is going to be camper printed forms. So I mentioned that on top of the web-based health history forms, you can also offer an option for parents to upload forms and also upload their own copy of a hard copy medical form. And those can be added by clicking on the camper printed medical forms. So within this page, you'll be able to add that form. They work very similarly to camper forms, so printed forms there, but it's going to be within the medical section on the parent dashboard. So we have those two medical forms that we saw as a parent, the upload immunization records, camper healthcare form. You can add new ones or additional ones by clicking on that link. You would put the name in there, and if you want to provide them with your own copy for them to fill out, you would upload it here. Otherwise, if you want them to upload their own version, you could choose to not upload anything there. And then you have due date. You can also generate a notification. And you can also choose to display it during enrollment. So like the health history forms, this is set to no, it's only going to appear to parents when their camper is officially enrolled in camp. I'm going to close out of that. So that's camper printed medical forms. If you wanted to include those, you can add them here. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to the medical dashboard here. If your camp has the staff module, you can also choose to add staff printed medical forms as well. So same idea here, except it's going to be for staff. Next, we have custom medical questions. So I mentioned there is a way to add any additional questions that we don't already include within the forms. You can do that by simply clicking on that link, custom medical questions, and you can add them here. So they work very much the same way as adding any question within CampSite. The only difference is that it's obviously going to be included in the health history forms. And also, if I click on this link, you can also have it so it can be marked as critical. So it would allow for admin to mark this particular question response on the camper profile in the medical tab as critical. So that is an option there for any of these questions. So that's custom medical questions. I'm going to go ahead and head back to the dashboard. And again, with staff, you can add any custom medical questions for staff as well. So that is medical management. Now I'm going to head up to the health center visit logs. I'm going to go over those now. So this is where you'd be able to start logging any healthcare center visits and also any medical incidents, if that applies. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this begin new log entry. So this is where you would go to start logging any of those. it's going to bring up a different interface. It's going to look very different from the administrative side, just because this is optimized for smaller devices. So like a tablet or a smartphone. So that way you can easily log campers sort of on the go, things like that. So it works the same way on like a desktop or a laptop, but it's more optimized for smart devices here. So to log a camper, you would simply just start off at the top of the page here and start typing in their name. So let's say, for example, Jill Paulson comes in and says she's not feeling well. I can create a log for her. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in her name. It's going to present me with some results down below. I would just simply click on her name. The system will then provide me with some basic information about the camper, along with a link to her medical profile, and also, right off the bat, critical medical information. So anything that's been deemed as critical or life-threatening, if not monitored. So we can see bee stings here. And then down below, we'll be able to start filling in the applicable information. So it's going to pull from that log items page, if you remember. So we have complaint, those values that we set are here. And I can go ahead and check off what applies. So it's a bee sting, we know that for sure, and allergies. And then we can type in any history of present illness. We know that she has allergies, so bee sting allergies. You can add that in there. And then you can add any physical exam information if that applies. And then assessment. So again, it pulls from those log values or log items. So we know it's an allergic reaction. And then I can move on to the next section here. So treatment. So again, pulls from those values. So let's say we gave her a little bit of Benadryl, and we also gave her an EpiPen shot with the right dose. And then disposition. So let's say we allowed her to rest in the health center for a little bit, and we notified her parent. And you can add any notes to that. And then lastly here, again, staff attending, which pulls from whatever staff that you added to that list. So it's going to be whoever is attending to that camper, or even who's taking this log. So I'm going to go ahead, just pick Michelle here. And then lastly, at the bottom, once you fill that all out, you have 3 options. You could choose to finish and close that log. You could choose to save it and continue it later, and also delete and start over. So with finish and close, you'd want to keep in mind that you cannot make edits to that log once you've actually finished and closed it. So if you think you may need to make any edits to it, I'd advise clicking on save and continue. That way you can come back to it later. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and just finish and close it. So I'm going to that, and it's going to have me confirm just in case it wasn't a mistake. And it's going to take me, or take the admin straight to any open medical logs that have been saved and not finished. And then from there, they can choose to click on the Start New Log to head back to that log page and start filling that out for any additional campers. And then in the top left here, you can head back to the medical dashboard, which I'm going to go ahead and do, and go over the next few things under Health Center Visit Logs. So below that, we have the View Open Log. So it just takes us back to that open log page. So it's also going to include any staff. So this is also an option to log any staff medical incidents or health center visits here. So any saved logs that have not been finished and closed. Admin can just simply click on that for that particular staff or camper, and they can review it and finish it when needed. Below open logs, you have recent log activity. This page allows admin to view the most recent log activity within the last 3 days. So log activity within the last 72 hours. So there will be a little sliding scale or sliding hourly scale, which you can go back to various hours here. Doesn't look like there's very many except for Jill. An admin can simply click on that log entry to head back to that log to make any edits and even close it out. So that is recent health center log activity. So within the last 72 hours. And so the last option under health center visit logs is going to be log archives. So if you ever need to go back any earlier than 72 hours, you can use the medical log archives to filter out within a specific window of time. And you could do that for campers and also staff as well. If you would like to see all of the logs, you can leave this blank and you can run that report. And you'll see each individual log information regarding that log. And also at the top, you have the ability to download this list and also export to a spreadsheet if needed. So that is medical log archives if you ever need to look back any earlier than 72 hours. So now that I've covered health center visit logs, I'm going to hop over to the medication delivery section and go over how to use that scheduled medication delivery log that I've mentioned a few times today. So once camp is in session and you're ready to start delivering any scheduled medications, you would simply come to the medical dashboard and then select the scheduled medication delivery log. So it's also available for staff if you need to deliver it to staff as well. So I'm going to click on this for campers in this case. And then from there, it's going to take us to another page that is optimized for a mobile device. It's going to be presenting the current month, which is December. So it's going to always default to the current day. And then it's going to have the admin pick the session that they're currently in. So currently, let's say hypothetically, we are in the Camp Firewood All-Stars session. And from there, I would choose whether I want to deliver this to a specific division. So this is tied to bunking boards. If so, you can also choose to deliver to a specific bunk if maybe you're going around a different groups or cabins or bunks or divisions or bunks. But if you would like to deliver it to all campers who need medication during that session or that day, you would just simply click on all divisions. It gives you a full list. And then you would choose the time. So this again pulls from those medication delivery times. So that's why those are especially important. So let's say it's about breakfast time and I'm going to go ahead and start delivering for breakfast. I'm going to select that. And then I can choose to rearrange the order or to choose the order. So I'm just going to do alphabetically. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit start delivering. And then from there, the system will present you with a list of all the campers who need medication at this time within that session. So we'll see Jill here and also a few other campers. And then I can just go around, locate the campers, click on the tile, and then deliver them that particular medication. So let's say we found Kristen. We can choose from those delivery statuses. These pull from those delivery statuses that we cover. And let's say I found Kristen, I can hit delivered. I can add any notes as well, so you can do that if needed. And let's say we found Quincy. I'm going to go ahead and give him this medication. And then let's say we found Jill as well at breakfast. We gave her Claritin. These campers will automatically disappear off that list as soon as you mark a status. And let's say for Angelo here, let's say hypothetically we can't find him at breakfast. I can mark this missed, add any notes, and I can come back to it if needed. I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. And now that I've went through the whole list of campers who need medication, I can head back and then I can come back to this page and start delivering for the next time. So same process. So that is how to use the scheduled medication delivery tool. I'm going to go ahead and head back to the medical dashboard. I'm going to go over the medication delivery report, which is another report option within the medical module itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So within this particular page, this is where you'd be able to view delivery information for specific sessions, and also for staff as well, if you'd like to. You can select a date range. You can report based on delivery time along with delivery status. So it's going to always default to the current day. So let's say, for example, I wanted to check in on all of the missed medications. I can do that. I want to check in on those breakfast ones. And I can hit Run Report. And I can see here that Angelo missed his medication there. It's a good way to pull up that information. And I also wanted to point out with the scheduled medication delivery tool, if your camp happens to have multiple staff members delivering medications at the same time for the same session for a specific delivery time, you'd want to make sure to stress that they always refresh that page before every delivery. Just that way the system will update those results and mark off any that's already been completed, since it does not auto refresh before every delivery. So again, if you have multiple staff members delivering medication at the same time for the same session and the same delivery time. So I'm going to go ahead and head to Angelo's page. Let's say hypothetically we found him and I wanted to change this status to delivered. You could do that directly in the camper's profile. So I want to make sure that that's updated. So to update any delivery statuses, you would go into their profile, click on medical, and then you would go into their medications tab. And then you can see here in the calendar, there's a little red color indication indicating that there was a missed delivery for that particular day. So to update that, you would simply click on the day, and you can do this for any day that a medication's been delivered, and I can switch that to delivered. I'm just going to delete this note just because that doesn't apply anymore. I'm going to hit submit. And then if I refresh the page, that red color indication will disappear. So also with scheduled medication deliveries, you want to make sure keep in mind that at 12 a.m. Pacific time the next day, that any unmarked medications for that day will be automatically marked as missed if an administrator does not go in and manage them. So you want to make sure to do it within the day and mark them. So that is how to use the scheduled medication delivery tool, and also how to make any edits to any deliveries if needed. So I'm going to head back to the medical dashboard here, and I'm going to cover the last section within this page, which is going to be medical reports. So the first option you have here is medical profiles. So this is where admin can download medical profiles in mass. So if you remember in the camper profile within the medical tab, you can download a medical profile individually for a specific camper. This is where you can do it in mass if needed. So once you click on that, the system's going to collect what information you want to be presented in those PDFs here. So you can choose to turn off anything if there's anything in particular that you don't want included in those printouts. For example, maybe you don't need let's see, the permission to treat, you can set that to no. Maybe you don't need health history, you can set it to no. You also have the option to set any medical information that can be marked critical to critical only, meaning it's only going to present any of those medical information that has been actually marked critical. So it's only going to present that. So once you've made your choices as far as what you want to be included in those medical profiles, you can choose who you would like to include. So basically who you would be generating these for. You can check off campers if you wanted for campers and also for staff as well. And the mode, do you want to print it out for a year, everyone within that year, or by session? So you could choose a specific session. It's only going to generate printouts for campers within that section. So let's say I want it for camp firewood. I could choose the order, and you can would hit print at the very bottom here, and then it's going to generate all of those hard copy medical profiles onto your computer, and you can save and print them out if needed. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. And additionally, you have the option to download a medical awareness list here. So medical awareness list, this feature is geared towards critical medical information and creating awareness lists that you can provide to staff. That way they are aware of anything that's been marked critical. So to download those lists, you would simply click on medical awareness list, and then you just run through the information that you want to include. So since this is geared towards critical medical information, everything is going to be checked off as critical only. However, you can choose to include every piece of information, regardless if it's marked as critical or not. You can also set it to none if you do not want to include it in this list. So I'm just going to set it back to critical only. You can also include camper info. And then down here is where you would choose who you want to print this out for staff or campers. And also there is a show all people setting here. So if this is set to no here, it'll include only campers that have results to display, meaning if you set these fields to critical only, it'll only pull campers that have information provided as far as critical only information. And if it's set to yes, it's going to include everyone, regardless of what information. And then the mode, and then the year, and the order. And then once you've selected those options, you would hit print, and it's going to generate that awareness list. And then lastly, within medical reports, you have the option to download a medication delivery list. So this is how users would be able to, or admin would be able to create a sort of paper copy of medication deliveries, some medications that are scheduled within a particular time. In this case, these times here. So it's a good option if maybe a particular session is going on a field trip and doesn't have access to Wi-Fi to log medications or log scheduled medication deliveries. They can download a delivery list and then hand mark that they're delivered, and then once they're back on site, the admin can go in and mark them individually on the camper profiles. So it's a good sort of backup in case admin can't access the scheduled medication delivery tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and just run through this to show you what that looks like for this list. So I'm going to do lunch here, and I'm going to do this for all of my campers and all of my staff within my Camp Firewood All-Stars session. And then from there, it's going to generate that list. It's going to show the campers and even staff, if that applies, what medications need to be delivered, and a little checkbox where admin can physically check off that it's been delivered. So again, a good backup if needed. So that covers the medical report section here, and also the medical dashboard, and also wraps up today's medical webinar. So thank you all for joining today's webinar. Feel free to type in any questions in there. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes to answer any last minute questions. So feel free to type in any there.